Hey everyone, welcome to Midweek at the Compass. My name is Jake, and just want to take a moment to say thank you for joining us once again. You know, as we're talking through Midweek at the Compass, what we're doing is just having further conversations around what we're talking about already from our weekend services. We are in a current series right now called Who Do You Think You Are? And it's all about our identity. Who are we in Christ, and what does that look like? You know, last week, Jeff talked about being saints or being forgiven. And this week, we're talking about our citizenship, where that lies, ultimately being in heaven. You know, we pull a verse out of Philippians chapter 3 and verse 20 where it says, "But our citizenship is in heaven, and we eagerly await a Savior from there, the Lord Jesus Christ." You know, and as we talked about citizenship, I was reminded of somebody who works here at the Compass Church who I've had the pleasure of getting to know even just recently, and it's Durmomo. Durmomo, thank you for the chance to just be here and do this with us. I'm excited to get to have a conversation with you today.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm wondering if maybe we could just start with the very basic of just who are you and where are you from?
Thanks, Jake. I am originally from Sudan, but when I say Sudan, there is a little bit of confusion into it as well because ethnically I am from part of the Sudan that became South Sudan in 2011. So I'm from South Sudan, I'm from Sudan at the same time, which is confusing, and it is even with my kids at home, it's still the confusion is going on. So yes, I am from South Sudan.
South Sudan. I love it. And we'll talk a little bit in a few minutes of how you ultimately came here. But let's start with the basics of how did you come to know Jesus? I would be very curious and honored if you'd be able to share a little bit of that story. Being from the Sudan, what was that process like for you?
Thank you so much for that question, Jake. My journey of faith is a little bit different than probably most of the people who would be listening to these because I was born in a confused family. Spiritually, everything was upside down because my extended family, which I'm talking in African sense, is mom and dad and uncles and aunties and neighbors, probably the entire village.
Yeah.
That is still your family. So that family was pretty much Muslims. But my dad was a churchgoer. I would not call him even a Christian yet. He used to go to church every Sunday. And that has put me in a spot whereby I have to answer questions from time to time. People asking me, people would come to me and say, "What's wrong with your dad?" And then I would say, "There is nothing wrong with my dad." Then they would say, "Why is he going to church?" And I will tell them, he is a Christian. That is why he goes to church. Then people will say, "So why is he a Christian since no one in his family is a Christian?" So it is, you know, as a kid, you're getting those questions. It is very confusing because I have to answer them. And at times, I had no answer to give. And then at the same time, seeing my uncles going to mosque on Friday, and I don't know how many times I have been to mosque, but I do remember a time that I went with my uncle. I was sitting next to him, he will bow and I will bow. And I thought it was fair because after all, we will have some candy on our way back home. There is nothing better than that for kids.
Absolutely.
And then on Sunday, it's just, you know, Friday and then Saturday I have a break. And then Sunday, my dad would say, "Hey, it's time for church." So what a confusion I have been going through. And I continue like that, seeing my dad going to church on Sunday, everyone else going to mosque. It continued until I was in college. There is a friend that I got to know from high school, and actually, he was not a friend because I hated him. Okay, he was my friend, but I was not his friend because, you know, in my mind, this guy is walking around proud Christian, but he does not go to the church that we go to. So he must be from some sort of a cult. Because he was not going to the Catholic church that I was going to, and he still tells me he was a Christian, and he would not hang out and do the things that we do. I mean, the crazy things that high school kids do.
Yeah.
He was not doing it. And I'm like, something must be wrong with this guy. And the relationship continued like that. Like he feels he's my friend, and I believe I was not his friend. And then high school finished, and now I'm in college. And one day I was in college, and someone came running to me, and here is John again. My friend showed up in front of me, the guy that I hated in my entire high school because he was acting as if he was a Christian, but I thought he was not.
Yeah.
And this guy just showed me love again. And I'm like, something must be wrong. I thought the days of high school are over, and I left this guy behind. He showed up in my life again. So things continue. We were going to college, and then one day we had like a break about a week, and he came to me and said, hey, we have this gathering of students. Would you come? And I'm like, what was it about? He said, oh, it is about church. And he was like, hey, I know you love church. Would you come? I'm like, hey, why not?
Yeah.
So I asked him, what is the catch? What is the price? Like, there is no price for it. Bring your backpack. Let us go and have fun for 7 days in a row. What else is better than that?
7 days in a row of church.
7 days in a row of church.
Okay.
So I accepted the invitation because I thought that was fun. That was something good to do. So I got my stuff and showed up. And as soon as I arrived, things did not look the way I expected it to be. There was a group of students praying on the side. And, I'm used to see someone with a robe, a pastor, a priest, and there is a respect. A bunch of high school kids praying. I'm like, no, that must be a cult. So what are you guys doing here? So I went and, I finished my registration. Everything went okay. And then they said, okay, let's get into this hall. We got into the hall, and then they had a preacher. And the preacher showed up, and he started talking. For me, he did not look like a priest that I used to see, because coming back from my Muslim Catholic confusion, I had a picture of how a preacher should look like, but this guy did not look like one at all. And then he started talking about rapture. And I'm like, rapture? He must be crazy. So in my mind, maybe this guy, if he wants to die, he should go somewhere and speak about his death to people. Why is he talking to a bunch of high school kids about things like that? I was mad at him. I hated him.
Yeah.
I hated the topic he was talking on. And, I had no choice but to sit through his sermon. I sat through that, and time goes on, and then little bit around dinner time, we went for dinner, and then they said, hey guys, we're having a movie tonight. I'm like, yes, I am for it. I am for movies.
Yeah.
So we went for the movie, we sat down, and then the screen was rolling by, and then something showed up on the screen again, and the title of the movie was Rapture. And I'm like, oh my God, this dude was just talking about rapture. And now I am watching a movie about rapture. And my initial thought is like, I don't know even what rapture is really about.
Right.
But is it the same thing that this dude just talked about, or something different? So it is a movie. I like movies, so why not? I sat down through the movie until it got to one scene in the movie whereby the devil stood up pointing finger at people saying, you are mine, you are mine, you are mine. And for some reason, I felt that finger poked my chest. It troubled me a lot.
Yeah.
And I started asking questions, asking people, who is the producer of the movie? And why was the scene in the movie? And I asked my question, why was I sitting where I was sitting? Why I did not sit at a different side of the room so that I should avoid my chest being poked at? And I could not get an answer. It troubled me a lot, but I'm like, you know what? These crazy people are doing crazy things around here. This is just part of it. I shouldn't worry about it. And then the next night, one of my best friends, Nixon, stood up and shared his testimony that he received Christ as his personal Lord and Savior. It drove me nuts. And I'm like, I went to him and said, Nixon, we are best friends, okay? What you did is wrong, and what I want you to do, go back to these people and tell them you change your mind.
Yeah.
And come back and apologize to me for what you did because we are friends. You should have not done that. And, I failed to convince Nixon to go back and tell them he changed his mind.
Yeah.
And he did not apologize to me. But we stayed friends still.
Good.
And things continue with me. So I was in that retreat for 7 days. Nothing changed. I left as stubborn as I went. And then my first night at home was when things changed for me. And as I was sleeping in the middle of the night, I felt the bed was shaking. And I tried to figure out what was going on. The bed continued shaking more and more. So my first thought was, maybe this is an earthquake.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, since houses back home are built of bricks, I'm like, okay, I should get off my bed and pull my bed away from the wall in case there is a collapse. The brick is not going to fall on me and eventually kill me. But the problem is I was not able to get off the bed and move my bed away from the wall. So now I have the thought to rescue my life, to save my life from dying. But I could not do it because I had no power to get off my bed.
Yeah.
And as I was going through that, something just clicked in my mind like, is this the Jesus that they talked about him in a conference, in the retreat that I just attended? And I'm like, maybe. And everything just kept flashing back, receiving Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior. And then I got on my knee that night and I invited Jesus into my life. I said, if it is you, the Jesus that had been spoken at that retreat, I would invite you into my life. Come and take over. I say that, and then I shifted into a prayer right away.
Yeah.
Personally, I speak 4 languages, not bragging about it, but I don't know which language I prayed that night. The language I used to pray that night, I don't know which one it was, but I prayed in a language. I don't know how long I prayed because all I knew was I opened my eyes. It was the following day. It was around 10 a.m. in the morning and did not know what went through the night. All I knew was praying. But here is the change. I opened my eyes and I felt fresh as I just arrived from a different planet. My own family members looked fresh and different for me.
Yeah.
Our own house looked completely different. Everything looked different. And then the first thing that came to mind was, go grab a Bible and read it. Honestly, I just bought one at the retreat because it looked cool. And because of the look, I bought it. And I thought I would never read it, Anyhow,
I've got a lot of books on my shelf like that, right?
So I picked it up and I read it as if I have never read a Bible in my life. It was so good and it was so fresh. And then the following day, I have to go back to college. And now in college, we have this group of students that we call them the born agains, that we don't like them. I hate them.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't like them because they think they're Christians. They're cool. I'm like, no, they're not. We hate them because we think about themselves being spiritual, but they, just to admit to you, they have never said that, but that was our own thought about them.
Yeah, that was your perception of them.
That was my perception of them. So I went on and I knew these guys every single Sunday. They have like a group of 10 to 12. They would gather together in a room, form a circle, study the Bible together. So I went back to college and I'm like, I'm going to join these guys. I'm going to pray with them. So I went into the room. The chairs were there, but nobody showed up yet. So I took my seat waiting for them for the prayer. So they showed up, and the first thing that they asked me to do is to leave the room. And you may ask why. Because prior to that day, I would come and take the chair off that circle and throw it somewhere just for fun because I hate them.
Yeah.
So now for them to see me there, all what's going through their mind is, he's again, the troublemaker is here. I told them, I say, guys, I am here for the prayer meeting. So they could not believe me. I tried to convince them. I was not able to convince them. Eventually what happened is they left the entire room for me. They left me alone because they were serious. They wanted to pray. They went to the next room. They formed chairs again. They started praying. But guess what? I followed them to the next room.
Good.
I showed up again. And I'm like, guys, I'm serious about prayer. So some of them were like, okay, guys, since he followed us, let him just, okay, have a seat. So I sat down with them. I attended that Bible study with them. And yeah, they were flipping back and forth. John here. I'm like, guys, tell me the page number. I can't follow up with you. I don't know where John is. Just tell me the page number, okay? Give me one Bible. I attended with them. And then at the end, I asked them, I said, hey, guys, can I come with you? Because I knew there was a place that students would go to pray, to fellowship together. So they refused to tell me.
Interesting.
Part of this is Christian activities back in Sudan was illegal. So for them, they need to protect themselves, to protect the group that they were praying with, because I was still an outsider.
Yeah.
They did not know me yet. They were not sure if I was a Christian or not. So they refused to tell me where they were meeting. But eventually I was able to find out through other sources where the meeting was going on. And I showed up in the meeting. And my next day in the meeting, my friend John, that I hated so much, showed up again. I was like, ta-da, I'm here. And we became real friends since then.
Oh, good.
And, I love this guy. And he became one of the best people that I have befriended in my life.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you came to know Jesus in a place where it's illegal to be part of a church and love and know Jesus. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit then of how did you end up going from Sudan to the United States? Would you be willing to walk through a little bit of what was going on there that led for you to leave your home country and come to a place that you don't know?
Yeah, the journey was quite bumpy. It was not by choice. And you throw out the term home country. I believe I had a country, but I never had a home.
Interesting.
I never had a home at all. I will come back to that later, but I was born in a country that had been in war and is still in war, as I'm talking right now. So war did not stop in Sudan. Because since independence in 1956, there has been a war going on until 73. Then we had a break from 73 to 83. Then we went back to war until now.
Okay.
So the country has been in war all the time. So I was born in a war zone, raised in a war zone. I grew up, and war have shaped part of who am I.
Yeah.
So I am shaped by war. I have to admit that. It is something that I have grown in it. I have lived in it. I have experienced it. So that war for me was something normal to experience. And then persecution that comes along with being in a war zone is something that has become part of who am I. So it does not cause any kind of fear anymore. Because, at some point I can remember pretty much that you wake up the next day and then you knew last night so-and-so was picked up. And you're not seeing them again. They're gone. They're being killed.
Oh, man.
And it was like, you know what? It's normal. Because the thought is, who am I if so-and-so was killed? Am I better than them? I am not better than them. And they have died for the same cause that I believe in.
Right.
So I should just stay and die. And we have a saying back in Sudan that says a group death is like a wedding.
A group death is like a wedding.
Yes.
Whoa.
So you know what? We're doing it together. Woo-hoo.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it alone, because we are fighting for the same cause. And if these people are going to kill us for the same cause that all of us believed in, that feels like a wedding. Because we are dying for what we believed in, And none of us have backed up. We're doing it together as a team.
Wow.
And that has been what I've been taught. That's what I have been grown up with. Until at some point, I was made aware that a warrant has been issued against me.
Okay.
For an individual arrest. So now moving from a group dash that is a wedding to an individual one, which is a little bit different. And prior to that, I went through that, and I had one of my professors in college that allowed me to live in his house for 3 months. And now with the new one, another thought started coming through my mind that, okay, now, where am I going now? What am I doing now? What would be my response? Should I leave the country? And that was an option that was never on the table. Because for me, I'm running away.
Interesting.
I don't want to run.
Yeah.
Why would I run? Because I am not better than those who chose to leave and they lost their lives as a result of that. So if I'm going to die for this cause, I will stay and die for it. I am a Christian. And growing up, I knew Christianity was not for everyone because it is a tough way to choose.
Yeah.
Because you may lose your life at any time for being a Christian. So a proud Christian should be ready to die for their faith. So why would I run? And then I talked to my dad. I said, hey, Dad, I'm going through a problem here. The city where I'm living in has become too small for me.
Yeah.
I had to go somewhere at least for a while. Can I come over to where you're living now? And to my surprise, my dad said no. He said, son, you can't come where am I because I can't even protect you. Even if you come here, they will come and drag you and kill you, and I can't do nothing about it. Jake, what a disappointment. Oftentimes, when you grow up as a little boy, your dad is your hero.
Yeah.
And now my dad is telling me he can't protect me. So I was like, so what do you want me to do? He's like, go somewhere. Like, where, Daddy? Anywhere. Leave the country. So now my dad is pushing me to do what I never, ever thought to do in my life. And I started consulting people around, people that I knew, including even the prof that had me in his house for 3 months.
Yeah.
Just leave. So now I found myself forced to make a choice that I never, ever thought to make. And then someone like me that had a warrant against them to leave the country is a problem because you got to go through security.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you got to go through the airport and then check yourself out and then be able to board the flight and then board the plane and then fly. I ran into 2 major problems. The first one, when I look at my passport, it was expired.
Oh, no. Okay.
So now I had to go get a new passport for myself. So I went, I stood in line to get a new passport. I got to the officer. He looked me in the eye and he said, what are you here for? I'm like, hey, my passport got expired. I need to get a new one. I got to renew it. He looked me in the eye and said, you don't belong here. We don't have passports for you. You want to travel abroad, right? You're not going anywhere.
Huh.
So now, my first step has come to complete a stop because I don't have a passport.
Right.
So I had to figure out now how to get that passport. I eventually got a passport, but I had to pay someone through someone. It is a chain of people that I had to go through and pay them money to get my passport. And now I got my passport. But how am I going to leave the country?
Yeah, that's problem number 2,
It is
right?
a problem number 2. Because my plan now is to go to Egypt. So I have 2 options, either to fly or to take a train through the border. But there is a problem with that.
Okay.
Going through the land is a little bit easier, but the problem is you can easily get killed there and nobody would know about it. But going through the airport is difficult, but maybe if they arrest me, maybe they may kill me, maybe they may not.
Okay.
So I have to make a choice. which one I want to pick.
So it's going to be an easy transport on land where they could kill you at any point,
Yeah.
or it's you go through the airport and maybe you get arrested or maybe you get killed.
Yes.
Okay, I don't like either of those options, but keep going.
You know, the thing is, because I had no third option.
Yeah.
I had only two options. I have to choose between the two. So what I did was to choose the option of, I'll go through the airport. But how am I going to do that? So thank God I had a friend who used to work for the travel agency who came with a plan. And the plan was, okay, I can get you a plane ticket. And I'm like, so how is that going to work? He's like, okay, you buy one-way ticket coming back from Egypt through the land, on land, and I will help you through my agency to get one-way ticket flying out of Sudan to Egypt. And I'm like, how is that going to work? He's like, that's my job. I will do it for you. I'm like, okay. So what happened is he got me the ticket. And then he said, hey, I got a news for you. The flight I'm putting you on is a trial flight. It has less security.
Okay.
So for this reason, I'm getting you the ticket on that flight. But I got one condition for you. For any reason, if they question you at the airport, I did not buy that ticket. You don't know me, and I don't know you either. And I'm like, dude, we are friends, right? What's going on? He's like, just to let you know, that is the condition now. Do you want the ticket? And I'm like, no, I gave him the money. Go get me the ticket. I will take it. So I got the ticket, went to the airport, went through security. Everything was smooth.
Good.
Board the plane, and then we took off, and when I looked down, I'm like, goodbye. I'm out now.
Yeah.
I'm good. 30, 40 minutes into our flight, an announcement came that we have a mechanical problem.
Okay.
And I'm like, what? So I'm like, you know what? Things happen. It's okay. We will continue with the trip. And then probably 5 minutes after that, another announcement came that, hey, the mechanical problem seems serious. So we are flying back to the airport. And just to let you know, in case of emergency, we may crash land anywhere. Wow. I looked around. I looked down. All I can see is desert. Okay. In my mind, I say, God, I thought I was running from death. But it seems I'm not, because you are now planning to kill me here.
Yeah.
I'm crashing at any time I'm going to crash. So we went back to the airport, and before we landed, a group of people got and said, hey, we have to have a plan, because if we allow them to get us out of the airport and then to go home, you never know if they will rebook you soon.
Right.
And, that plan worked perfect for me, because going through the security again, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, you had a warrant out still.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we went back. By the time we landed, one of the engines was already in smoke. There was a flame coming out of it, but thank God we landed. And the good news is they took us from there. They put us in a room, and they said, if you guys would agree, all of the passengers, stay in this room here. Do not go anywhere. We will fix the problem for you. And I was like, that was perfect for me. So honestly, I found a corner. I just sat down by the corner. I did not want to talk to anybody, because I did not want anybody to ask me, what's your name either, because that would be a problem for me.
Yeah.
I sat down there, and sure enough, they put us in another plane, and we were able to fly out of Sudan. So that is how I left the country.
Oh, man. So
Yeah.
A warrant for your arrest, trying to figure out which of the two options is maybe going to work and hopefully not get you killed, to taking off, thinking I have finally made it and realizing I still might die, to having to return to the place where you thought you had just left forever. And ultimately, God was still good and faithful and got you out.
Amen.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm wondering, could you tell me even just a little bit of how did you go from that point to how did you end up in Chicagoland and working for a church?
A trip because I came here as a refugee, and oftentimes refugees do not choose their route of trip.
Okay.
So you run for your life, and in some instances, you don't know where you're going. You don't know what you're doing next. You don't know what tomorrow would bring. So you don't plan because you have nothing to plan for. So I ended up in Egypt, not knowing what's going to happen next. And it seems like life has ended. That is the end of it. I can't go anywhere, and I can't go back to Sudan. And I was there pretty much until the UN office called me and they said, hey, we want to talk to you about something. And I'm like, what is that something you want to talk to me about it? They were like, there is a chance of resettlement for you. I'm like, oh. So I went to the office and they went through the paperwork, and one of them said, we looked through your paper and it seems if we send it to the American embassy, they would accept it.
Wow.
And I'm like, whatever would make it acceptable to the American embassy, go ahead and do it.
Yeah. Whatever
do
it
it for
takes.
me.
Yes.
So I had to go through that process, but it is a process that is not done overnight.
Sure.
So I lived in Egypt as a refugee for 4 years. And this is a true blessing because most refugees do not, only 1% are able to be resettled in a third country.
Oh, wow.
Only
okay.
1%. So I'm one of the 1%.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, I have people that I knew that when I came to Egypt, they were there. And as I'm talking to you, they're still there. And I have been in the U.S. for 15 years now. And these people are still there. So refugees may stay in a country that they have run into for maybe 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah.
You never know. And, the process went and everything. It's an interview. After interview, I think I have no room to explain to you how the process works.
Sure.
Because it is a crazy process to go through. And finally, I landed in New York.
Okay.
The funny part of that is I arrived in the U.S. on October 31st.
Okay.
And if you're not aware about the American calendar, it is Halloween Day.
Yes.
I never knew about Halloween. Nobody talked to me about Halloween. So we landed in New York, and I'm seeing all these people's costumes around me, not knowing what is wrong with them.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay. And it troubled me, but it troubled my wife more than it troubled me.
Yeah.
And she was really troubled, and she started asking solid questions about what are these things? Probably in her mind, this is the America you're bringing us to, right? And at some point, I was pissed off because the question was getting so intense. And at the same time, I was trying to figure out to navigate the airport to catch our plane to Chicago. And I looked and said, honey, this is America. You can worship whatever you want to. Call them evil worshipers. Is that okay with you now?
That had to have been unbelievable culture shock, going from a different place to arriving in the U.S. for the first time on Halloween.
Yes.
I don't know what I would do if I walked into a place for the first time and saw everybody just in weird costumes everywhere.
Yes.
And to them, it's all normal because it's just one day of the year. But walking into it for the first time, it's just got to be jarring.
Yes. And coming from where I come from, pretty much that was a straight demonic image. There is no explanation to what we're seeing around the airport.
Yeah.
There was nothing I can explain to my family what it was. It was just a demon thing. Just take it like that, honey.
Yeah.
So, we flew from New York and landed in Chicagoland, and we have been here since then. So
Awesome. And now you are on staff as a pastor at our church, running our guest services and community impact out of our Wheaton campus.
Yes.
And I'm sure there's a bunch we could go into there, but I do want to circle back to one thing that we maybe never got the full answer for. And maybe that can kind of be the last little bit that we talk about here. Is you said that Sudan is where you were born and raised, but you don't really feel like it was your home country. Wonder if you could just unpack that thought a little bit for us.
Yeah, home at some level is not just a modern brick. It's not being between walls, or it's not just being in a place that you are born at. Because being born in a place would make it home for you if you have the true feeling that is home. If you have the true treatment that people are treating you as if you are at home. For me, I never experienced that back in Sudan. Maybe when I'm with my parents, I feel I am at home, but once I step out the door, the treatment I receive on the street doesn't make me feel at home. And even though I look at that place that I loved so much, that I have looked at it as home, I never, ever felt at home at all. I have always been felt as being a foreigner or a second-class citizen, because in many instances, just to throw some few examples there, I went to a place because I was working on some paperwork, and I went to a government office to get some stamps. And the first thing I handed over my paperwork, and the guy said, "Tell us, where are you from?" And I said, "I am from here." "What do you mean?" They were like, "Do you have anything else besides these documents to prove you are from here?" And I said, "Is this a new requirement?" They said, "No, it is not, but for you it is. You have to show us paperwork." Like, so where am I from? At another instance, I went to another office because I was planning at some point I need to go study abroad. So I took my birth certificate to this office, which is the job is supposed to endorse it and put a stamp on it that it is an official birth certificate. And everyone has to do that. So I stood online for almost 2 hours, got in front of the desk, handed over my birth certificate. So this guy, all he needs to do, look through, verify it, sign, and stamp it for me. He asked me to wait outside. I went outside. I was waiting for almost an hour, and he showed up with my birth certificate. He took a red pen and drew a cross across the 4 corners. And he looked me in the eye and said, "Whoever gave you this birth certificate, give it back to them. You don't belong here, and you don't have a birth certificate." Threw it on my face and left. So are you talking to me about a cancel culture? No, I have been through it.
Yeah.
So how can I call a place like that home? This is just a sample, and it
Absolutely.
has been a daily thing that we have to go through. As a person, I have to go through.
Yeah.
And still I call that home. So this is why I said earlier, even though it is home, but it never felt like home for me.
So as the last true question here now, to kind of tie it back to what we were talking about for our weekend service of just heaven being our ultimate home, that's where, as Jesus followers, our citizenship is. That's where we long to be. But for now, we're somewhere maybe where we don't want to be. Just with your experiences of fleeing a country and being a refugee and immigrating to the United States, how has that shaped your view ultimately of heaven?
Going through the experience of never feeling being at home or never have the feeling of having a home, it has been tough on me. Because often I would ask myself, so now I'm getting this treatment right here where it's supposed to be home. So where is home then? Where is my home? So because I don't belong anywhere. So the question was, every single day I would look at myself and say, will I ever find a place to call home? And then after becoming a Christian, after knowing that my true home is not here, it is a game changer for me.
Yeah.
It is a total game changer because for me now, I got what really helps me. Because in the past, when I go through that treatment, it hurts a lot.
Absolutely.
Because this is supposed to be home. But after becoming a Christian, it became like, wow, do whatever you want to do to me because I know this is not my home. I am not saying that I am not endorsing people to mistreat me just because this is not my home.
Yeah.
I am not saying that because I am not a happy person. No, I love my life, okay? But this is not my home. And that have given me a new way when I think about heaven being the real home that I'm looking for. And I had no taste of home here. I had nothing to compare it to. And that puts it at a totally different level for me because there is nothing I can compare that home with. And that makes me just eager to get there and enjoy it and finally feel at home. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking to die tomorrow.
Oh,
I love my life.
Yeah.
But when I get there, I believe that is the home I have been missing my whole life.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That will be your first taste of home.
Yes.
That'll preach. That's unbelievable. So just generally speaking, thank you for your faithfulness, for everything you've had to endure. I don't know that I could even begin to wrap my mind around it or imagine myself in your shoes. But it has shown the faithfulness of God over and over in small ways and in large ways. And I'm excited that one day all of us will get to experience what our true home, if we love and follow Jesus, is ultimately going to be. And I can't imagine just how sweet that day will be, knowing that that will be your first experience of feeling at home. So just thank you for being willing to share. Thank you for just your story and the impact that it's had in a short amount of time here, even on me. I'm honored and grateful to just be able to sit here and listen to you speak and what has happened and will continue to happen. And praise God that your story's not done. Right? Like there is still some reason that you are here, and I can't wait to see what God's going to continue to do in you and through you in the years here to come. So
thank you.
Thank you for joining me. And thank you, all of you who've been joining in today, for just being with us on another Midweek podcast episode. Next week, we're going to have a message that's all talking about how we have been adopted into God's family. So we're going to have a conversation to continue those thoughts. And we're going to do it next time we're together here on Midweek at the Compass.